Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm very happy to be in South Africa and discovering the wonderful country. I will share my experience at multifocal IOLs. Currently, the market share of multifocal IOLs in France is just 6%. My own ratio is 78% now. Of course, the surgical compensation of presbyopia is a bit tricky because it involves both optical factors, neurosensory factors, and perceptive factors. And we have compared in the past different methods to compensate for presbyopia, including corneal surgery, including presbyopic LASIK, and different styles of multifocal or aspheric IOLs. And the one thing we've noticed in the past years is that most IOLs were actually bifocal and would actually leave a gap for the intermediate vision uncovered by their optical properties. So the current requirement for IOLs that aim to correct near, intermediate, and distant vision would be to be easy to handle for the surgeon and provide a subjective defocusing curve that is satisfactory. And that is to achieve freedom of spectacle in all areas of work for the patient. Another feature that is also important for those IOLs is to minimize the risk for posterior capsule opacification. There's a number of available lenses in France, and I have concentrated in the last 4 years on those 4 models, including the conventional reference Atelisa from Zeiss, which is a bifocal diffractive design, the diffractive trifocal from Fine Vision, the refractive lens from Lentis, which is the Lentis M+, and a new design from Medicontour, which is a diffractive structure with an extended depth of focus. These are the details of these lenses. You all know the Lentis M+ lens that has been described already in these sessions, and it's an aspheric design that has the interest of sending more than 50% of the light on the distance focus, which is good for distance vision in the dominant eye. This is the lens that I typically use in the dominant eye for all my patients now. In terms of diffractive intraocular lenses, there are 4 designs, of which we will concentrate on the 3 later developments. The apodization of diffractive structure makes it possible to change the ratio of light that is distributed to distance or near according to the diameter of the pupil. Most multifocal diffractive lenses have adopted this apodized design. In the trifocal design by Physiol, which was also adopted by the Zeiss trifocal design, there is a dual diffractive network, which makes it possible to gather the lost light from the first diffractive network to implement intermediate vision with the second diffractive network. In the third design from Medicontour, the shape of each individual step in the diffractive structure has been altered to the nanometer to create a profile that will extend the depth of focus for the light. When looking at the optical bench, such a design makes it possible to go from this typically bimodal curve into a more blended curve in the intermediate range. The real-life testing in the optical bench in this slide compares the trifocal design from Physiol, which is in green, to the extended depth of focus from Medicontour, which is in red and blue. And you can see that there is no miracle here. If you use a trifocal design with a dual diffractive structure, you lose part of the light for distance and near, but you gain more light for intermediate peak. In the extended depth focus design, you still have quite an amount of light for intermediate vision, but the amplitude for both distance and near is better. The study I will present now is about 1,189 cases, consecutive cases, of the 4 lenses that I described. In terms of refractive outcome, there is no special finding. The sphere is quite good in all lenses and the cylinder as well. You can see that we've been able to achieve quite a good correction in terms of fraction. And this is paramount to obtaining good clinical results with multifocal lenses, as you know. What's interesting is the uncorrected visual acuity, monocular vision, and we deem excellent results patients who obtain both 20/20 in the distance at 5 meters and Jaeger 1 at 35 centimeters and Jaeger 4 at 65 centimeters. And you see here that most lenses, all lenses, get the same distance result, but when you compare intermediate vision, you see there's a marked difference between the 3 later designs as compared to the conventional bifocal design. You see here that only 50% of cases get Jaeger 5 for intermediate vision with the conventional bifocal lens from Zeiss, as 87, 91, and 96% of cases get that amount of vision for intermediate focus. This also translates in the defocusing curve that we obtain with these lenses. You see here the typical bimodal curve for bifocal lenses with the gap at minus 150, and this gap is bridged by the trifocal or intermediate extended depth of focus design, as you see here. The interesting thing is to compare lenses. I typically never use the same lens in both eyes. I try to mix and match. And when you look at the defocusing curve that we obtain by using the Lentis M+, which is a distance-dominant lens, with either the fine vision lens from Physiol or the Medicontour lens, we obtain almost perfect defocusing curve, the curve that you would expect in a 20-year-old person. Another good point about mixing and matching is that you can ask the subjective preference of the patient. And here again, when you ask the patient who has either one or the other lens in the eyes, you see that there's a marked preference when comparing fine vision and lentis for the lentis for the distance. But when you compare Medicontour and lentis, you see that the difference for the distance is not so established, as the Medicontour is preferred for near vision as compared to the lentis, and lentis preferred for intermediate vision. In other words, this combination here is nowadays my favorite combination for patients because it provides both an excellent distance, near and intermediate visual acuity without correction. You can see this outcome in another way. This is the curve that translates the percentage of patients who obtain Jaeger 2, 3, 4, and 5 at 65 centimeters without correction. And you can see here that the best curve is the Medicontour curve, followed by the Lentis, followed by the fine vision, followed by the bifocal Zeiss design. The last point I would like to communicate about is the prevention of PCO. As you know, this is mostly related in hydrophilic lenses to the migration of cells on the posterior capsule, and this can be prevented by the design of the aptics that put more pressure on the posterior capsule, and also by the design of the edge of the optic, having a square to make it possible to create a physical barrier to the migration of cells. This is the survival curve for 826 cases of the YAG survival rate as a function of time. And you can see that as compared to the Zeiss design that has round edges, the newer design that has sharp edges are getting better outcomes in terms of prevention of PCO. Many years ago, that was almost 11 years ago, I published a paper on 876 cases showing that the brand of the IOL was not so much important as the material. Hydrophobic get a little better result for the first 3 years, but after 4 years, it's similar to the hydrophilic lenses. But the main factors that explain the differences in terms of rate of YAG capsulotomies are the angulation of aptics, which put more pressure on the posterior capsule, And the most important factor, the single factor that explains most of the variance, is actually the sharp edges. Another information about the lenses, that when you make the promise to the patient that you will implant a multifocal lens, you want to have a backup plan in case something bad happened during the surgery. I had one case of capsule break in my series of medical lenses, and one case in my physio series. And I was able to implant the physio in the sulcus and the medicontour in the sulcus, but you see here that the design for the medicontour is much larger. It's a 13mm haptic design, which holds very well in the sulcus, as you can see on this picture, with a perfect clinical outcome regardless of the intraoperative complication. In conclusion, I will say that when choosing intraocular lenses for the patient, you should always consider the multifocal option because it improves the ability of the patient to see without glasses. It improves its quality of life. And you should actually try to optimize the choice of the lenses in both eyes to try to get a synergy between the two eyes and a very good vision at both intermediate, distance, and near. Thank you very much for your attention, and this is where I live in Paris, about half a mile from the Eiffel Tower. Bye-bye.